Hello, and welcome into something that doesn't really have a name. It's just me and Brendan.
That's the show name. Just me
Yeah,
and Brendan.
it's just talking ball. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. I
So
have.
yeah,
Hold
what do you
on.
got?
Before we start, look at this.
Oh, you got your eight.
I had to
That's
bring it out.
incredible. You have
Only
a
for
rule.
you. Yeah.
I've got a ball ready, so we can play
There
some
you
catch
go.
on the
I'm ready
screen.
to
There
go.
you go. So we're set. That's incredible. Looking like Dansby over there.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, man. So we're here just kind of like I said, talking ball today. We're gonna
Yeah.
hit on a lot of players. We kind of wanted to. I got this idea listening to you and Corey last weekend's episode, and I think I texted you and you're like, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. It's just kind of fun. I mean, I have the podcast that's dedicated to the Cubs farm system. You have the podcast dedicated to the Cubs minor league or major league team. It just kind of made sense to hop on here and answer some questions.
It was funny because I was thinking the same thing. Because we're talking about September call-ups, and I was listening to you guys. I'm like, you know what, Greg and I should do something soon. So you texted me. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. This makes a ton of sense.
I feel like right now too is like there's a lot of like overlap, especially as prospects are like reaching the upper levels of the minors. The Cubs are actually competing at the major league team. It's like it's the perfect time to kind of talk about both. They overlap quite a bit.
Yeah, and there's a lot of overlap now with a lot of the pitching stats at AAA. You can look in to what guys are doing, what they need to work on, for Jordan Wicks or Ben Brown before the injury. So it's for me, it's easier to talk about those guys now because I rely, you watch the games a lot. I don't watch the games that much. So for me to go in and look at their numbers, get an idea of what's going on, and just match that with highlights, for me, it's so much easier to follow.
So we got some questions already sent in to us on Twitter. If you guys have questions, we're gonna try to answer literally as many of these puppies as we possibly can in the YouTube chat. That's the way to go. Before we get into that, we can address. Well, actually, we'll address some of the questions that were sent on Twitter, but I think that we can't not address the Christopher Morel situation.
It's a necessity.
Holy crap, dude! It's not a question, but I guess my question is how are you feeling? How many times have you watched the video? Because I watched it an outrageous amount.
I lost 3 hours of sleep last night just because I was watching it, but I just couldn't go to bed. Man.
Dude, you were clipping different parts of the celebration. It was incredible.
I had to. I was up at 6 a.m. I was posting the Dansby slow-mo. I don't know if you saw that. Just spectacular content. Slow-mo, jumping up and down with
I posted
Morel.
today. You see Mike Napoli in the group there?
I actually missed it.
As Christopher Morel was crossing home plate, he jumped, and Mike Napoli had come from the first base coaching box and was jumping around with the whole gang.
I missed it. Has that ever happened for a first base coach?
I don't know. I'd imagine that Willie Harris had to be in there too, right?
Yeah. Well, Napoli and Willie would be those guys.
They would be those guys.
That makes sense.
But no, I mean, I tweeted out again. I've been saying this for a while. It's the Christopher Morel experience, man. Since he was a prospect, it's been that experience. It just hits different watching.
Dude, his swing. I marvel at the profile views of his swing. It's an extreme example, but dude, his hips, the way it just explodes through the zone, and it's an extreme example. But the one guy that reminds me of that is Acuna, and Acuna's on a different level. But the explosiveness, and if you look at the mechanics, the hips come through the zone before the bat barrel does, and it's just it's insane. He's so level and explosive. It's nuts.
Yeah, man, it's to watch him change so much from a prospect to now has just been so much fun from my perspective. You want to dig into some of these questions here? I think we got enough here that we can start addressing them.
I got one question though before we get into those questions. So I get asked about it all the time, the Morel early AAA, I guess demotion, if you want to call it that.
Start off the year.
Yeah. I mean, in your perspective, worth it? Was it necessary? Was it always inevitable he would get to this point?
I don't know. It feels like at the very least what it did was just motivate him more. And he feels like a guy that answers to that motivation. He plays off that pretty heavy. I don't know. It's from the Cubs perspective, it feels like what they did was they were he can't sustain success with this strikeout rate, and they were prove us wrong, I guess.
Yeah,
and he did,
just a different way.
He continues to do so.
It's funny because the idea was, all right, go down to Iowa, try to make more contact.
Yeah.
He's okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to triple my power output. That's what's happened. It's crazy.
And we knew that was there, like, to a certain degree, right? Like, we
Yeah.
knew that, like, the bat speed was incredible. We knew that he hit laser beams across the diamond, but it's like, there's a difference between doing that and making it count in games for, like, in-game power, which we'll kinda get into a little bit. We have a question about
Yeah.
Hayden McGeary, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit. But,
All right.
yeah, it's like it's that there's a difference there, and now he's, like, actually showing he's actually a stud. I love
It's
it.
crazy, man. Yeah, I mean, it's still like 64% contact rate. In theory, that has to go up, like, to be a consistent producer. But I mean, he keeps adjusting. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where I just wouldn't be surprised if that's the next logical evolution for him.
Yeah. So for the people that are in the video in the live stream watching here, I didn't want to lead
What's
off with
up?
this before we didn't get enough people in here, but we're going to be answering questions both Cubs prospect related, Cubs major league related. We'll be answering both. Send them in, and I think that we'll know who will lead off with the question, and then we'll kind of go some back and forth. I think that's probably the game plan, don't you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's address some questions first that came in. We had a couple from Twitter. Let's talk about. You want to talk about the big overarching question? Or you want to save that?
Up to you, man. That's a long question.
Yeah, let's start here. Let's start
Yeah.
here. We got a question about PCA, and this feels pretty appropriate for this chat, right? Where how soon will we see him? I'll start with you. How soon do you want to see him? Like, when is when is too soon? When is too late?
I mean, I'm stupid about this. Like, my thinking is like always be aggressive with promotions. That's kind of like my fan and hyper aggressive mindset. And then the other side, in the back of my mind, I think, okay, well, he had some strikeout issues, some contact issues earlier on. There's this degree of uncertainty where I don't quite know what he was instructed to work on to improve that contact rate, which has been improved and the power has gone up. So to me, if the Cubs are still asking him to work on things, to adjust, to make more contact, maybe he still needs to prove that. But if that's not likely to happen, and if they have confidence that major league pitching won't accentuate and exasperate some of those underlying things he needs to work on, then I would call him up right away. Like, from the major league team perspective, he is a huge contributor because you see it comes in, pinch runs. You see the ability for him to demand attention by the pitchers on the bases, and the defensive versatility. You can put him in center field. You can slot over Bellinger to first base. He might be an option, to offset some of the lefty stuff with Talkman. So, like, I think it makes sense if the Cubs want to win. It's just a matter of balancing that with the instructs for him to improve contact.
Dude, picture like a game where Candelario is playing first base, so you don't need Bellinger over there, and you just got an outfield defense of PCA, Bellinger, and Mike Topman.
Yeah.
Like, those three, a ball would never land. It'd be incredible.
It's just the vacuum up the middle with Dansby, Nico, and PCA is unbelievable. And then even like Bellinger first base defensively, it's next level. It's the best defense I've ever seen, hands down.
Yeah. So I mean, I the way I view it, we talked about it a little bit I think it was on this past maybe the last episode a couple of weeks ago. Brian and I talked about on Cubs on Deck about this very topic, right? Where when is the right time to call it PCA? I think it's based on everything like Carter Hawkins and Jed Hoyer are saying in the media. I think it's kind of a given we'll probably see him at some point this year. Brian and I
that's a pretty strong thing to say, though.
Yeah,
right?
well,
like even at this point,
exactly. And I think that the way that Brian and I kind of covered it is that the way PCA's mind works, if the Cubs front office said, hey, we're calling you up in September, and we're calling you up to be a defensive replacement to wreak havoc on the base paths, and just also you can get some at bats, but you're not going to be starting every day. I think that he, like, as long as he was communicated that, and as long as, like, I think he would thrive in. I think he could put all of his focus into that, like, doing that, and he would just thrive. He'd be the best defensive center fielder in the league. He would steal some bases, like, it would, and then with the mindset that, hey, I'm starting next year in the big leagues or whatever, right? Like, I'm starting opening day in center field for the Chicago Cubs. Then that is like, you can just focus on doing your thing in September, not having to be a superstar at all.
Yeah,
and he still might make himself a superstar.
And like, there's always the argument, you call him up, it's good experience, like yada yada yada, which is true. But for me, the added benefit is the experience, but also the environment where you can, like, I said this a few times, people can like lock in adjustments. Like
Yeah.
the way I think about this, when you raise the leverage, you raise like the emotional context, which means as a result, like you're primed to lock in different information.
Hmm.
So that's a rare thing to have for a developing prospect in a playoff environment. So if you're working on stuff, let's say you're working on whatever batting approach, whatever mechanical thing you're working on, if you get the opportunity to then go out in a playoff atmosphere, then your brain's already primed to lock that in.
Yeah.
And so that's a really unique developmental opportunity. And one thing, like I was talking to Corey about this, like when we were discussing the selling versus buying option, the the contrast was, well, if you sell Bellinger, or at the time it was Stroman before the injury, you might get back, given the market, maybe like a top 75-ish, top 50-ish prospect, which is good. It's good value there. But then there was a side of me, it's like, okay, well, if you give those guys up, then you're sacrificing playoff environments. You're sacrificing developmental opportunities for someone like PCA. So I value that, and it's not just the experience of like being in a major league clubhouse. It's the actual ability to go out when the stress is the highest. You cannot replicate that environment anywhere else, not in your training, not in Iowa. And that, I think, can just accelerate some of the iteration process a little bit faster.
I mean, it's something where development doesn't stop once a prospect reaches the major leagues. And I think that, have you seen all the stuff with going on with the Foul Territory TV? And I know Lance Brozdowski went on that show talking about the Yankees development. And how they're not developing the rights, or they're not developing the minor leaguers the right way. It's like, yeah, but you don't stop your development once you get to the major leagues. It's like you need to continue to improve, because major league pitchers are better than AAA pitchers, which are better than AA. Like you just continue to develop, and I think PCA getting that experience is good. Actually, this kind of goes into this next question we got from Dwayne here about Matt Mervis, where how he dominated AAA, but he didn't do that during his time in the major leagues in a short amount of time. And I think that my first comment back on that is that PCA is not Matt Mervis. Like, Matt Mervis isn't a top 100 prospect. He never was a top 100 prospect. He might have cracked top 100s on like one list or two lists, but Matt Mervis was not. I mean, Matt Mervis was, in my eyes, never a top 10 prospect in the Cubs system. So, Matt Mervis and PCA are different, because PCA is a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. So that's one thing. But we're watching Matt Mervis dominate in different ways, even down in AAA again. It's like there's not much he can do. He's got to get some time, and he had the time this year. Like, he could have had that time if the Cubs weren't on Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer for so long. That like he could have had that time to figure it out a little bit, and not necessarily like sink or swim, but kind of.
So I mean, like how they handled the Mervis situation was kind of odd to me. It's not odd, and not in a way of me like critiquing the situation. I just found it very interesting.
Yeah.
I thought, given, as you pointed out, his prospect status maybe not being like top 100, if that's the case, just like go all out. Like, I would have thought, if you exposed him to major league pitching in September last year, and I get the 40-man stuff, I get all of that, but I thought it was worth the 40-man risk just to see what you have in Mervis. But also, to your point, let him go through that adjustment period now, rather than going through it during a pennant chase where it's not possible, where you can't afford to have him go through that. And maybe, like, given the Cubs' competitive window, he may never have a chance to go through that consistently, like Rizzo had the chance to go through, and other guys.
Dude, like, I'm happy with the Candelario trade. Like, don't get this twisted. But like, imagine if Matt Mervis would have started the year as the first baseman for the Cubs, and he would have had it figured out by the time the trade deadline came around. Like, not even like dominating, just kind of had it figured out. Would the Cubs have not made the deal for Candelario at the deadline?
I think part of me is always skeptical, like that these guys can figure it out that fast. And even like in that context, like, I think a good example at the trade deadline this year was they went out and got like, Quas, who's interesting, has interesting mechanics, just a unique guy, right? But like you accept some volatility, some risk in that. And so for me with Mervis, unless it was an extremely hot start that looked as if it was destined to not completely revert, then I think I would have won out and still gotten like offense.
Yeah.
So like I don't think it was likely, but I think with Mervis in September and earlier in this year, I wish we knew more about him. That's all. Like you can still go out and get Candelario even with Mervis doing well, and it's kind of like a good contrast to the Morel stuff, right? Like Morel's been doing well, but they still had to go out and get another bat, right? So you can always, it's not like a one or the other type situation. It's just weird. I thought it was weird. I remember talking to you about this last August, and you called it. Like we were just like texting. I'm like, so are they going to call him up? And you told me like, no, it was 40-man stuff. Like he may not be up till, on the open day roster. I'm like, what are you talking about?
You're like, how dare they?
But that made no sense given that they weren't obviously going to be competing by opening day. Like it made sense to me, just like, like he's going to be a 40-man guy, but opening day, they're going to give him the opportunity. And they just like didn't do it. So to your point, why do you think that was? Of course, the results are not good. I know we have a ton of questions here, but I think the Mervis stuff is so interesting given crushing AAA, flew through the system, has been getting praised even by I saw like Kyle Bodie praise the Cubs for this many months ago. What's going on?
Yeah, I think part of it, I don't know directly in terms of what the front office thinks about Matt Mervis, but I do know how first base prospects are viewed. And actually this comes on the day where Pipeline just released their top 10 first basemen in all of baseball, and the Cubs got Matt Mervis and Hayden McGeary on that list. And it's like, I tweeted out, I was like, part of me thinks I don't really care at all about first base prospect rankings. Part of me is like, the Cubs have 2 players. That's awesome. It's it's just, to me, the first base position, you just have to have so much offensive value. Even if you're an Anthony Rizzo Gold Glove caliber defensive first baseman. If Rizzo, when he was playing his like prime defensive first base, if he put up even like a 100 WRC plus, people would be calling for his job. You just have to produce an incredible amount with the bat. It's like, how much faith, how much trust do you have in a prospect doing that, in a major leaguer doing that for over the course of several years? It's just tough. So it feels like you can put other guys at first base. I know it's the whole playing defensive first base is incredibly difficult, right? The Moneyball thing, but it's like also you got to have offensive value there, no matter what defense is being played there. Yeah. I know we had a question about the first baseman in the system. Now might be a good time to address it. Michael Eddy tweeted at me asking, out of Matt Mervis, BJ Murray, Hayden McGeary, and Moises Ballesteros, who makes the most impact at first base for the Cubs?
That's a good one.
And that is a good one because those are all guys. I think BJ Murray has actually been pretty decent at third base since he's been there pretty consistently for Tennessee. Man, I could go into detail of all these guys. I like Moises Ballesteros' bat the most.
I mean, his bat's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The swing is just next level, right? It's just the concern is like, how does he age into that body type? And that's even a thing in my mind that's unprojectable. Like, of course he looks, compared to other guys his age, like pretty big. And so you imagine, as a result, the mobility may not be the best. But to me, it's still to be determined.
Yeah.
Like the athleticism, anyone who swings a baseball bat like that, like you are an outlier by definition.
To me, it's the hit tool. To me, it's like the hit tool is like his hit tool is different than the other guys on this list. Well, actually, all of these guys, although they're all first basemen, first base / DHs. Well, Moises is a catcher right now. But although they're all viewed as first basemen, I think they all have a different story, right? I think Moises has a much better hit tool than all of them. And so that brings his value up a little bit.
I mean, I would say without you watch McGarry and Murray a lot. When I watch like some of the recaps or some of the innings I get, like Moises is not just a better hit tool. It's like obviously and dramatically better. to me.
And obviously dramatically better, and he just like has good at bats too. So it's not just like he puts bat on ball, you know, it's he puts bat on ball after working a 6-pitch at bat, you know. And then like BJ Murray, that's what he does the best, right? Is that he draws walks, he works counts, he does all that good stuff.
He still strikes out a decent amount there, too.
Exactly. And then so I know that like Hayden McGeary and Matt Mervis are compared to each other a lot. The difference is that Matt Mervis is extraordinary at making contact at the right point, right? So like taking advantage of pulling the baseball, getting the ball in the air, the perfect exit or the perfect like launch angle, all that good stuff. Hayden McGeary just hits the ball so damn hard. Like he hits the ball on the ground too much, but like, he just hits the ball in like not quite Owen Casey levels, but like incredibly hard, and that's where he succeeds. So I guess to answer this question,
I mean, it's a loaded question though, because like the timelines are all over the place. You have Mervis who could be immediate, you have Moises who could be like in 2 years, and then Murray and McGeary kind of in the middle of those guys. Like if I had to guess, I mean, given those 4 right now, given the Cubs situation, I would probably just say Mervis. The proximity to the league,
it's the safest bet.
The safest bet. Bellinger's not extended yet, right? I know we all want to see him extended, but he's not extended yet. He's probably the safest bet, given everything we've seen. Is it likely? I don't think so, but none of these 4 guys are likely.
If we're going with safest bet, I think you have to choose Matt Mervis. You have to. If you're going based on like where would I rank this guy higher in a prospect list, I'm going Moises Ballesteros.
Oh, I go Moises Ballesteros by a significant margin.
And another guy, we'll get into some more major league stuff here in a second, but this question was asked about Owen Casey potentially playing first base.
Yeah.
And I like this question, and I like this question because it's been asked, I think, since the day he was acquired for Yu Darvish, and I think it's possible that he gets converted to first base. I just think that like the way I view first base is like that's a last ditch effort. That is either he has taken a downturn in the outfield, which I am way more impressed in his outfield defense this year than it was last year. But shocker, he played in Canada, right? Like he took fly balls in a warehouse. Like so it takes some time to figure out how to play the outfield. He looks more athletic this year, which is good on the base paths. It's good in the outfield. And I love that. It's a last ditch effort if he takes a downturn in defensive outfield, or if the bat is just ready and you got to play him at first base in Chicago, right? That's the reason why you would put him at first base. Let's hold off until he's not 21 years old, I guess, is my answer. But I mean, like if his bat's ready and like that's the place where he can play, then hell yeah, like do that.
Listen, if his bat's ready, you can put him at catcher. Like I don't care. Like he's such an interesting guy. And when the year started, like the K rate just went up significantly. You know, it's funny that now that I think about this, when I was on the podcast, was it 2 months ago?
Yeah.
I feel as if the moment I pressed this mic off, the farm system just accelerated upwards. Dude, I was in a dark spot talking to you on that show. Because like at the time, I think Owen was striking out 40% of the time. And then Alcantara was kind of going through some growing pains.
Oh, dude, yeah. You had bad timing.
Bad. The Cubs sucked. Like Matt Shaw wasn't in the organization yet. And I'm thinking like, damn, like
what are we doing?
Is not looking good. So like ever since then, and I know Brian Smith and a lot of you guys have been talking about this, but like K rate gone down to around 25, under 25%. The balls changed or something like that.
Yeah, so they were using in the Southern League. They were using like pre-tacked baseballs.
Yeah.
Which just made it like I talked to a few guys, and they were like, "It is just not fair. Like it's not fair what the pitchers are able to do to these baseballs. Just the spins and the velos were just wild. They were wild down there.
So I mean,
it caused more strikeouts for all players down there.
There you go. So I mean, like I don't know how you race on the Bash score if you just look at that sample, but like if you just look at like the last 150 plate appearances, 100 plate appearances, he might be one of the best Bash scores in like Major League Baseball, right?
Yeah. He even including all of that from the first part of the year, he's still I think third in the system.
But I'm saying like even like minor league baseball, not just like the Cubs. That's in a really impressive stretch of power, contact, age against a competition that's just well above his age. It's insane.
We got the most important question that we're going to be asking on this show.
Yeah.
Curious to hear what the banner behind you.
I can never like point on these like cameras. My brain's all messed up this way.
I'm not familiar with that banner. What is it? Can you
let me
explain
check
that to me?
Let me check. Oh, the World Series championship banner. Yeah.
Oh.
That the Cubs won. It says,
how'd they win
Cubs.
that? Or how'd they get that banner?
So this is what happened. They went 7 games in Cleveland, and they actually won the 7th game of the World Series. Which, if you look at the math, when you win 4 out of 7 games, you win the World Series. So that's what happened.
Yeah, and the rest was history, right?
The rest was history. It's a great question.
I love it. All right, let's get into some major league questions. All right, we had something about Hayden Wesneski here, which that's right up your alley.
Let's
see. Here we go. I know he's no longer a prospect, but do you think that Hayden Wesneski should think about ditching the 4-seam and try to work on a 2-seam cutter and or sinker?
Man,
that's right up your alley, dude. That question was meant for you.
You know, as the years have gone along, especially like recently in the past year and a half, like the more appreciation I get for like pitching coaches and developing these guys, and ultimately when you and I talk about this and other guys talk about this, like we truly are so blinded by everything that it's hard to say. So I can look at all of the movement, I can look at all the pitch models, like all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, guess what? I don't have like the Edgertronic like slow-mo cameras. I don't have any of this. I'm not doing this like every single day like Wesneski and Hottovy and these guys are. So should he ditch a pitch and ditch the 4-seam and work on a 2-seam cutter or sinker? Honestly, I don't know. I will say the 4-seam having about 7 inches of arm side movement is just not going to work against lefties. And in a weird way, that's what gives me some concern about Taillon this year. Cause like, this is a weird thing, dude. Like his fastball, Taillon's fastball has the same amount of arm side run as Wesneski's right now. Mm-hmm. And like Taillon said, like he needs to get that away from 7 inches down to like 3 to 5 inches. And you see the struggles that he's gone through because of that 4-seam leakiness. Now with Hayden, is it possible that he can change the 4-seam and go 2-seam cutter? You know, the 2-seamer has about 15 inches of arm side run, but it lacks that depth. So if you look at someone like Marcus Stroman has a lot of, supination ability, a lot of seam shifted wake. As a result, he has a lot of depth on this sinker that Hayden just doesn't have. So for Stroman, he can offset some of the platoon splits because he has a lot of arm side around, but he has the depth to go with it that Hayden doesn't have. So I would bet that the 2-seam's not going to work against lefties unless you add that depth. So then the idea is, okay, well, 2-seam's likely not going to work absent significant changes. The 4-seam, given his natural mechanics, doesn't lend towards being a useful pitch in the future. Then it seems like the cutter is kind of the last step, and the cutter rates well, but people say, it's gotten killed this year. It's only been like 8 base hits, and it has gotten hit hard. But if you look at this stuff and you look at just the amount of movement it generates, the separation of his fastball, the velocity, like it is by far his like best fastball type pitch. I would like to see Hayden in a perfect world grow comfortable with the pitch because he's not using it more than 20% of the time. It signals these guys are not stupid. It's not to say, you throw your more cutter. He's not throwing it because he's not comfortable with it probably. My hope is he becomes more comfortable with it. You can offset some of those lefty issues. Exactly what we saw from Alzolay. Once Alzolay did that, boom, you're closer, and then we're not looking back.
So what's that mean? Like, if the cutter is his primary fastball pitch, like what does that mean for him in the rotation versus him in the bullpen? Like it feels like you can't get away with being a starting pitcher and not having a
if he doesn't change, he's likely not going to be a starting pitcher. Yeah. Like that's kind of what it is. And
is this like an example? So I know, like, I don't know if we've talked about it, but I know that you have talked about it. I've talked about it maybe separately.
Yeah.
The idea that like a guy is just really good at the supinating versus pronating. Yeah. And is this just an example of like he's really good at throwing that slider because his arm works in one way and it just can't work the other way? Is like that an example of this here?
So I mean, like we talk about the sweeping slider. He's always had that. Like that was never developed. Like that naturally came to him. Mm-hmm. And so he's been throwing that. He said, I think even since like high school or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's one of those weird guys. It's with him, the the way to change that is going to be unnatural, right? And you're already at a point where like the margin for error is so slim in Major League Baseball. You can imagine it's very difficult to go through all that, right?
Yeah.
Then again, when he debuted and you saw, like, so when he debuted and he's throwing those sweepers and he's throwing those cutters and like the sinkers, diving into kneecaps of right-handed batters, you can't ignore that. Like that stuff is like very rare when you see those pitch types commanded as it was. So he had success in those 30 innings, right? And that made me believe, okay, the four seam's not there, but it's the age, the underlying psychotic nature of Hayden Wesneski. He's an obsessive person. Like he'll talk to our guy Ryan Herrera, CHGO. He's not a normal human being, Greg. So like I value that mindset and recognizing what you need to change to get to that next point. So he's not a finished product. He has to change. But I think when you combine like the natural ability plus his like brain, I think maybe not a good chance to struggle, but I would not be surprised if like the cutter becomes like a Yu Darvish type reliance, and that gets him to the next step.
Yeah. I think that if you're looking at the rotation, like somebody has to step up. There has to be somebody here. We actually have a question about Killian, Assad, Wesneski, right? That trio. Any chance that any of those three establish themselves as a piece of the major league rotation? Who can impact the 2024 rotation and bullpen? So, I don't know. I guess which of those three, Brendan, would you pick as being a long-term, not even long-term, just like over the next couple of years, making an impact in the rotation?
It's a tough question, right? Like you look at Assad. So Killian for me is the third guy on that list. Yeah. I mean, that can be a whole discussion right there. But for Assad,
we can literally go like 2 hours on Caleb Killian. Yeah.
But like, so when I look at Assad and Wesneski, like both those guys have unique traits and unique limitations. For Assad, he doesn't have that wipeout stuff, but he has like a pretty diverse repertoire where he has that cutter, he has that sinker, he has that four seam slider, and that could be good against handedness. But unlike Wesneski, he lacks that wipeout pitch. Wesneski has that sweeper. He has the ability to go in hard to riders with that sinker, but he needs to cutter. So I always kind of go with the best pitch type and just hope that they can take that next step and develop. So I would probably go with Wesneski, but it's not to say that both those guys have limitations right now that they have to get beyond.
Yeah, I'll go Javier Assad. I don't have any Brendan Miller data to back it up. I just like if I'm placing a bet down on one of those three guys, I go with Assad.
Yeah. He's a weird guy. Like
he's a weird guy. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I mean, you watch him develop and everything, but like
no, dude, like honestly, that's one of those scenarios where like I didn't really.
I mean, like, flew through the system.
Yeah, well, so he was for a while. I mean, he's been in the system for a while, and
but like I feel like he just really amplified last year.
And he like it was one of those things where like he wasn't really. He didn't warrant our attention for several years in the system, right? He was just a guy that had a ERA over 5, and he was in the lower levels of the organization, and it just didn't warrant our attention. And then all of a sudden, he added a few ticks on the fastball. He continued to like find the zone a little bit better, and he just came out of nowhere. And so like I'll put some faith in a guy like that. I don't know.
Yeah, he's very difficult for me to project because he has like his two-seamer sinker has more vertical break to it, so it has more like a ride, and typically that's a bad thing for sinkers, but his is so extreme where it's like, okay, this guy has a ton of ride on his sinker, that's typically bad, but then again, this guy's ride on his sinker is among the most in Major League Baseball, so it's like, well, what does that mean? And then his cutter also has that natural like high vertical break, and what does that mean? So like he's in my mind difficult to project because there's not many guys like him, and typically the stuff that he has doesn't work well in a less dramatic fashion. So it'll be interesting. But as a result of that, I'll just go with the wipeout pitch in Wesneski.
Do you want to talk Jordan Wicks or Alexander Canario next?
Let's stay on the pitching.
All right, we got a
Right.
question about Jordan Wicks somewhere here. It was just general speaking.
Yeah.
Kurt asked Jordan Wicks call up. Yes. Let me actually while we're doing this, hold on.
Read his stats.
He was going tonight for Iowa, and hold on, I'm pulling up his numbers. Last I saw, he was through I think 3 innings, no runs, and it's trying to pull up. Maybe not.
Your phone hates you.
Yeah.
Yeah, your phone does not want Jordan Wicks to be called up.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what's going on.
Here you go. All right, Iowa. Jordan Wicks, he ended up giving up a couple runs. He went 4 2/3. He gave up 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. So his last 2 outings have been terrific. Giving up 1 run in the previous 3 outings leading up to this one.
Yeah.
I think that he needs to be called up like now to Chicago.
Wow.
I think he needs to be called up now. The Cubs
I feel like you're like you're the one in the prospect here. You're the most aggressive with that, which I like.
Yeah,
like you fit my brain.
And which is weird because typically I'm the guy saying like hold off on calling guys up. Like
yeah, you're pretty conservative with that. Yeah.
But Jordan Wicks is different, man. Like I think the thing with him is that right now the Cubs need stability in their rotation, right? Because no Stroman, Smiley converted to the bullpen. Is Wesneski a starter or reliever? Javier Assad, like what is he like? Just so many unknowns with that rotation, and like the Cubs need a grown man. The Cubs need a grown man to occupy that rotation, and Jordan Wicks is a grown ass man.
Yeah.
This is not the the PCA situation. Let's call it PCA. Let's call it PCA. That's different. Where like he is expected to be a superstar once he reaches the major leagues. Jordan Wicks is not expected to be a superstar, right? Like there is zero expectation that he gets called up this year and sports a sub-3 ERA. That's not expected. What he can do is come up to the big leagues. He can sport a sub-4 ERA, a 4.5 ERA, something good enough to like just stabilize that rotation. He's not going to make a playoff start for you, but he can go out there and like keep you in a game to get an extra win as the season kind of wears down. Also with Jordan Wicks, what I really like is that I just like there's something about him that I think he can be more, if not just as successful at the major league level as he's been in the minor leagues. I just think that like so much of him is like very. I think he would do wonders with Tommy Hotovy, I think is my story. Like I think that Tommy Hotovy would do wonders with him. And man, he's looked a lot stronger. I think that like he can go out there and compete, that bulldog mentality. I think that like he would thrive in the Chicago. He would thrive in this like playoff atmosphere, dude.
Yeah, I've seen him talk, and he kind of has that mentality. Question for you with Wicks. I've followed this on the periphery, but like it seemed over the past year and a half, some of the intention was to work on like a curveball at times, and then like it switched to the cutter stuff. And again, I might be just completely off on all this, but like it appears as if, and looking at all this data, he doesn't quite have that like a lateral pitch that seems comfortable, but it looks like he has. I mean, changeup looks like ready.
The changeup is terrific.
Like the four seam looks like a competent four seam for a major leaguer, right? So he has those 2 pitch types. You can see him throwing those cutters. You can see him trying to tease a curveball at times. I don't know what they want to do with that. And then you see some like slider variations in there. So I'm wondering like what the hell is going on?
Yeah. So you posted something today, I think, right? Where it showed the map of kind of the movement on all of his pitches.
Yeah.
I'm glad you posted that because it kind of matched what I was seeing where you have the cutter movement.
Yeah.
You have the curveball movement. And then the slider kind of is a variation between the two. Like sometimes it leans more cutter, sometimes it leans more curveball, and all 3 of those kind of like bleed into each other a little bit. I think that ultimately he'll probably need to ditch one of them, maybe 2 of them, but probably one of them.
I feel like he's better for like a curveball.
Yeah, it seems like he'd be better for a curveball.
Like his curveball specs, I know he's only thrown it 20 times, but it looks good.
Yeah. He's not throwing. Honestly, he hasn't thrown it enough for me to feel passionately about it.
I know. It's just like in the 20 times he's thrown it, like it fits the profile.
Every once in a while, the slider just looks good, dude. Like the slider does look good every once in a while, but the movements are all over the place, like you were showing. But I think that is a good example of like, I think once he gets to the major leagues, I think Tommy Hotovy says like, why the hell are you throwing that? Like, why are you throwing this cutter or whatever? I think the cutter could be good. I think that he could be good off the fastball, changeup, cutter,
I don't think he
and
needs
then
a cutter though.
you don't think so? Just because that would be a repetitive pitch to a
He
righty.
has the four seam already. So like, why
Yeah.
add in another like
Well,
hardish type
this
pitch to the
cutter is good
righties?
against opposite-handed hitters, right? Like, so like,
Yeah,
as a lefty pitcher, the cutter
yeah,
would be used to
for
righty
sure,
batters, but
for
he already
sure.
has a
But
changeup that he uses against righty
yeah,
batters.
and he
That's
already
really
has a
good.
decent four seam
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So like, think about it for like the Wisniewski Alzolay stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
for Alzolay, he in that brief period before the injury, he was heavy slider, heavy sinker guy. Just those two pitches. He got lit up against
Yeah,
lefties, right? Comes back from injury, cutter, all of a sudden, slider, new variant, a little bit more tighter, higher velo, and you're able to handle the lefties better because he has that tighter breaker. So with Jordan, like he already has a decent four seam. Like I think it's not ideal, right? I'm not saying it's ideal, but if you're gonna expend effort to try to develop a more lateral or secondary pitch, like it kind of makes sense for me to go with the more extreme version of that and get the whiffs and just bank on having like a decent four seam, a decent changeup, and go with something more lateral for lefties. Like I think that's what you need, something more lateral
yeah,
for lefties.
yeah. I feel that actually. That's a good point. I
You know,
think that in terms of him being called up this year, I think that he is what he is to a certain degree, right? Like he'll go up there and he'll get you some innings. So far this year, he has thrown. He threw 58 and a third innings in Tennessee. He's thrown 28 and a third, not including tonight up in AAA. He'll go get you some innings, man.
yeah.
And in comparison to like Ben Brown, right? Who Ben Brown is currently on the IL. I think that when Ben Brown does come back, that he's going to need some ramp up time, and they were already like approaching an innings limit on him. So he's
Yeah.
not going to be your answer in the rotation in Chicago. He can
Yeah.
maybe help with some bullpen help.
I'd be
Jordan
surprised even
Wicks,
if that happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would too. But like Jordan Wicks is your starting pitcher if you need him,
I think
and I
so.
think they do. I think they do need him. So,
Yeah. I like it. Call him up. I'm
all right,
convinced.
let's do. There's a question about. Let's do the Alexander Canario because
Okay.
Alexander Canario is. Let's talk about him and his value and future. He's starting to look like himself, dude. He's starting to look a little bit like it's been slow and steady because he
Okay.
came back and like when he was in South Bend, like the bat speed was not there, like the athleticism was not there. But like the dude is coming back from two like bad injuries. He had to
I
rehab
would
two
have died
injuries.
on the field if that
Yeah.
happened to me.
Yeah. I
Like
would have been
100%.
I would have retired immediately. And so now I wouldn't say like he's back. Like I don't think he looks like entirely back, but like the swings are looking a whole lot better. He's seeing pitches better clearly. He's using the other field well. Yeah, dude. Like he's not gonna come up again. Another guy not gonna come up to Chicago. He's already on the 40 man roster, but he's not gonna come up to Chicago. Count on him for next year. Probably not opening day next year, but like I don't know, mid-season or whenever he gets hot. Like whenever he gets hot next year is when he gets called up.
I thought when he was going through the Cub system post trade, we would see way more strikeouts. And like even from the jump from Double A,
And he was
AAA,
at first.
he was at first. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, this
yeah.
guy's like one of those guys, just like,
Yep.
power, but strikeouts, right? Kind of like the Jonathan Perlaza stuff, even though
Yep.
like the strikeouts may not be like super high, but the contact rate I think is like 66% or something like that.
Yeah, you were saying that. Yeah,
low.
yeah.
It's
I hadn't
really
looked that
low.
up specifically, but that's
Yeah, yeah,
super
yeah.
low. That's
Super low.
Real quick tangent on
Yeah.
that because the 66% is like a very low contact rate.
Like Morel 64% at the big league
yeah,
level right
yeah.
now.
But the thing with Perlaza, you watch his at bats.
It doesn't
and, like,
seem like he would do
he
that.
works good at bat. Like he
I
was
know.
really like
I've seen
deep
those games
counts
too.
and like I don't know. Do you think that's something where like he just swings and misses early and counts a lot and then
Dude, I
like
have
kind
no
of
idea.
locks it in? I don't know. It's like
Dude, I have no
because you
idea.
said that like 66%. I
I
hadn't looked
know.
that up and I was like, there's no way.
I
There's
know.
no way that's a thing.
I don't
But
know if there's an error in his system, but like it
yeah,
says
yeah.
66%. So like with Canario, he's 75%. And that's like the weird thing about this is that his contact rate right now is better than Matt Mervis's contact rate.
Yeah.
And like I would have bet my life savings we would not see that this year. I think Mervis is around 73%, which is kind of scaring me because he was 78% in AAA, demoted, whatever you want to call it, 73%. I know people hate that. So that's kind of weird how he's gone back down to AAA and the whiffs have gone up like pretty dramatically. But with Canario back to him, I think for him it's just health. And if the health can return, which is a crazy injury and you can't project that, I am really surprised he's making that much contact. That actually, for me going forward, is a huge relief and it gives me more confidence he can be a guy.
All right, so like the outfield in Chicago next few years, right?
Oh,
like
man,
we got Happen Suzuki locked up.
Yeah.
You got PCA on his way. You got Canario not far behind.
You got Bellinger at first base.
You got Bellinger there that can play some first base, whatever.
Yeah.
I think from the perspective of like what do you do with all these too many outfielders, right? Like I don't care.
So what do you do? What do you do? Because like you do have corner locked up for 3 more years.
I don't know.
Legit, what do you do?
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that.
I mean, it seems we talked about this several times, but like there's guys in the system that you can just imagine being involved in trades. You know, I've wanted Jed to be aggressive with that. I thought even this deadline he would do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm still surprised we didn't get another reliever beyond Quas. But for Canario, it's a weird thing because his value is at an all-time low given the injuries and still needs to showcase himself. By the way, can he be an AFL guy, Canario?
He's on the 40-man roster. I just assumed. Okay. I don't think you can be if you're on the 40-man roster.
I have no idea. I don't know.
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
I was gonna say maybe you go to the AFL and you showcase that. It would make sense
if 40-man guys can go, then he is the perfect example of that. And if 40-man guys can go and he can go to the AFL, there's a whole lot of other teams scouts down at the AFL, and that's a good trade candidate there.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what you do. Maybe. I doubt they trade Seiya because they like his stuff so well and like the price is relatively cheap, but like who knows what happens at this point.
You know what solves a lot of this actually is if Christopher Morel can play some third base. That's always that's what we can always just go back to. Because
now you have Matt Shaw. So now what?
Because if Morel plays third base, right, then that opens up DH, and then it doesn't matter. Like then you can even re-sign Bellinger. You can re-sign Bellinger, play him at first base. You can have Morel at third base. Nicky Two Bags can go wherever the hell he wants to go. And then you got, I know he's been good. Good. But then you can have PCA, still have Happen Seiya, and then you can have a DH in Canario. And then as things shake out, as Casey comes, I don't think it's ridiculous to say that Owen Casey has a shot at the opening day roster in next year.
Get out of here.
I mean, he is.
Don't get me wrong. I'm just like shocked to hear that.
He has been. I mean, there's a reason why he's like shooting up prospect lists, right? Like he's been
Where would he? So hold on.
The contact rate scares me.
But if it's if it's getting better, then
it's getting better, and the dude hits absolute rockets.
So like if they extend Bellinger, right? Yeah. And like he still needs to go through the next 7 weeks, to have for the Cubs to get all that information. It's not like a foregone conclusion, like he's selected an obvious extension candidate. Like I love him, right? I assume, given he's healthy now, like the production will continue, but like you still need to see 7 more weeks, right? But if you assume that Bellinger is extended, like it's so difficult to see Owen get consistent time. Like even if he's ready, right? Because you still have Morel. You still have PCA center field. Like, where is Owen going to play if you have Bellinger at first base and you have Morel DHing and everything?
I think if David Ross goes in, if David Ross goes back to third base, Owen Casey behind the plate. If David Ross goes into next year opening day with the same mindset that he's had right now, where he's like the best guys have to play, then I think you find a way to make it work, right? Like I think that fits. I think that I've been the low man on Seiya since like forever, and I understand the value that he brings. I understand like he's getting jobbed on some things here and there, but like I think Owen Casey is that guy we've been asking for the past couple of years, where it's like the clear middle of the order bat. Yeah, they can go out there and hit tanks. It's like Bellinger's been that this year, but coming into the year, they had nobody that was even resembled that.
Yeah, I saw, Joe says that Suzuki has no trade clause. He does. Sometimes you can just waive it, There's going to be certain scenarios where it is good for his family situation and personal life, so it's not like a foregone conclusion. You just can't trade him. Although, to your point, Joe, I would not assume he would waive that, but you just never know. And by the way, I'm not saying Trey Suzuki. I know you're not
No,
saying that, but sometimes people say like, "Oh, what
no.
are you talking about?" Um,
You wanna
yeah,
you wanna change it up here a little bit?
yeah, sure.
All right. We got a question from Michael Eddy on Twitter. This was the first question that was sent in. Asking
Ooh,
this is heavy into prospects.
yeah,
We all know about Cade Horton, Ben Brown, and Jackson Ferris. After those three, who has the highest pitcher ceiling in the system? Which is
man,
tricky. Like that's a tricky one.
man, that's
Um,
a really tricky one.
I've kind of hinted at the fact that I don't see a whole lot of high
Depth.
pitcher upside in the system right now. After these three guys, there's a lot of guys that I like. There's a lot of arms that I like, but like the guys that were really high upside that were starting pitchers entering this year, Luke Little and Daniel Palencia, that are both now in the bullpen.
Yeah.
So, I think my answer to this on Twitter was the easy answer is Cole Franklin.
Yeah, you know,
I
we've been
still
hearing his name for so long.
yeah, and I think there's a little bit of prospect fatigue with him.
Yeah.
Let's ignore this last outing that he had where he couldn't get out of the first and he gave up like 6 runs or something like that. We talked really highly about Cole Franklin on last episode of
It's
Cubs
our
on Deck,
fault.
and yeah. Brian texted me. He goes, let's delete the episode." Um, yeah, so it was. I think that's the easy answer because he has the starting pitcher body. He has the starting pitcher stuff. He has good stuff, not just like not even like Jordan Wicks type stuff. Like he has a really good fastball, a really good changeup, and the slider. I think the slider is pretty damn good too. So that's the easy answer. I'm not saying like that's a super high upside or like a whole lot of confidence in that answer, but it feels like the most like safe answer to a high ceiling guy. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, you know, Horton and Brown and Ferris. Like, I've actually gotten to see Jackson Ferris pitch. He just screams potential.
Yeah.
After those guys, my answer means nothing because you guys have actually looked into all this. But just looking at the system, like I come away, it's like after those guys, like I feel as if we kind of lack that depth. I don't know how like you kind of feel about it, but it's not to say that there is no depth. It's just like not from a fan's perspective, not quite there for me.
Yeah.
So I would probably, I feel like uneasy even saying this. Like Drew Gray looks
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like I
Sure.
like his size. He's like a big lefty, like getting strikeouts. 20 years old. I know command is like all over the place, but he's 20
Yeah.
years old. So for a high ceiling, give me like a big lefty that gets strikeouts.
I think
I don't know.
that's a pretty good bet too.
All right,
My
passed.
my like the answer that could be right in a year is Jackson Wiggins, who is the second round draft pick this year.
Nice.
He's just, I mean, he's coming back from Tommy John, so
Yeah.
we don't know what he is, but I mean, the Cubs drafted him second round for a reason. The Cubs went into the very last minute to be able to sign him for a reason. That might be the answer in a year. So we'll just have to see.
I have a question for you before you go on to
Yeah,
the next one. We might be here for the entire night. I apologize to your wife.
probably.
The Cubs drafts over the past since like Cantrivus took over. Like I kind of throw COVID out the window because like they cut so many different scouting personnel. But like since 2021, we've had a few drafts here now. Is there a theme that you're seeing? Is there no theme, which is still fine to say? Do you see like moves and draft picks coming into the system? Like that makes a ton of sense. From my perspective, I can't follow this like you guys do. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So I rely on like you guys to like tell me if this is good or not. From your perspective, like how has it looked over the past 3 years?
It's looked like I think we talked about it on Cubs on Deck a little bit. I think Brian initially brought this up, so I don't want to act like I'm stealing his thought here, but I completely agree with it. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit.
Okay.
It feels like the Cubs are finding the peak performance of these players, but it doesn't matter when it comes, right? So like Jackson Wiggins, he performed extraordinarily well in fall ball down at Arkansas.
Okay.
And they were like, okay, that's what his peak performance looks like.
Yeah.
Even if he hasn't consistently done that, it's fall baseball. We love that. That's what we want. If it's a good couple of weeks on the Cape, that is that peak performance of an offensive player, right? Like they're identifying potential like major league skill sets in that like elite output, no matter how long of a stretch. And I think their goal
I
is
like that.
with Jackson Wiggins, for example,
Yeah.
is to take that very small peak performance and just elongate it as much as they possibly can. Like, let's make a full year out of this peak performance. Like, we know the fastball is elite. We know the slider is elite. And I think we've seen that with Cade Horton, right? Cade Horton was a draft pick
He's a good
last year.
example. Yeah.
And they said, okay, like, he was as good as you can possibly be for about a 3-week stretch during the College World Series. Outside of that, he was kind of garbage, but I mean, for other reasons, right? Like Tommy John and all that.
Did
good
you
stuff,
just say
like,
Cade Horton's garbage, Greg?
Yeah.
Wow.
But like they're like, oh, like we know like what he could possibly be, and he has that good fastball. He has that good slider. Let's see what if we can get him. I don't want to say get him into the lab. That's not what I'm going to say, but like, and see what we can do for over the course of an entire season. And like, we're seeing that. That's exactly what you want to see. So, I am not one really ever to say this draft strategy is bad or this draft strategy is good, because I just don't like. I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to speak too much out of turn, but like, even like a guy like Greg Zumak, who covers the draft at better than anyone that I know. I don't know that he can even say something like that. It's just it's your preference as a front office, and we just got to kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking, like even you and I on your pod a few months ago, but Corey and I throughout the early part of the season, it always came up. It's like, well, how do you feel about the Cubs' future given the poor performance early on, some of the slower ramp up period for prospects earlier on in the year? And I had this conflict of like, man, like I like Kantrovitz. I like what he's done in the past. I like some of the guys in the system. I really like the cohesiveness of some of the pitching going on, but like I want it all. Like I want to see everything like go up. It's like, do I like the front office going forward and everything? Well, I would like to see more. And given how everything's worked out in the past 2 months, and like you're seeing that development stuff kind of trickling through, and like the Cade Horton stuff is significant for me, and even like Matt Shaw's early performance and getting Owen Casey normalizing these and the pitching from like Assad and Palencia, it's like, okay, I can kind of see it. Like I see now what we've been hoping and anticipating. I can see that translating to hope and like optimism for this group as a whole.
So I want to throw something out at you and see your thoughts on it, because I've talked about it. So anybody in watching this that has paid attention to the past couple Cubs on Deck episodes, I apologize because I'm going to repeat myself here. But I just more and more every single day, I just think that with Cubs or with pitching prospects, if you see that they have major league quality stuff, get them to the major leagues, man.
Yeah.
Like I just like why
Palencia.
waste bullets in the minor leagues? If Palencia has major league quality stuff, which he does. Now, is Daniel Palencia major league ready? No. Like he's probably not, right? He has major league stuff. Is he major league ready? No. We're not gonna we will likely not see it. Although there's a non-zero chance that we see Cade Horton up in Chicago this year. There's a non-zero chance. But we won't see, like, we likely will not see Cade Horton in Chicago this year because of the pitch limits, right?
Yeah.
But say that pitch limit was not there, why the hell is he not in Chicago right now? Like that would be my mindset, right? It's because if he can't help long term,
you're like me with that. It's like just be super aggressive.
And if you have to send him back down to AAA, then that's fine. But like, it just if you have major league quality stuff, and it's different for like a guy like Jordan Wicks, right? Jordan Wicks does not have stuff that like jumps off the page at you. Ben Brown does have stuff that jumps off the page at you. I'd be okay with promoting him. That's fine. It's different with pitchers than hitters for me, in my eyes, in terms of that. And that's grown on me. Like, I haven't always thought that way, but now I'm pretty heavy into that.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
All right, you want to run through some of these here?
Yeah, what do we got here?
We got a question about my puppy. Can't see the puppy. He's downstairs, but he's doing
Bring
well.
the puppy up.
Yeah. What else we got here? What are the chances that we see or that Michael Arias sticks as a starter?
This is for you.
And what would he need to improve to stay as a starting pitcher? He's got to improve the command and control. He has 3 really good quality pitches. The fastball touched triple digits. It has good movement. The changeup is very, very good, and I think the slider is good too. So the stuff is good. The command and control is just not there at all. It's why I ranked him. It's why I would rank him below both Luke Little and Daniel Palencia, because I view Arias as a reliever, and I just like those other two relievers more. So
here's
I'm high on those as relievers, though.
Here's a question for you. So when you're looking at these, 20-year-olds, a lot of them in, let's say, like South Bend, maybe at the cusp of Tennessee, like when you make the idea of projecting a guy for a starter versus a reliever, what is the first bullet point that you hit in your mind?
Oh, I don't think I've thought about it from I probably just do internally without thinking about it.
So you have like a gut, you have like a gut feeling, like, oh yeah, starter, reliever.
Like
based on look of the guy.
I think it's multiple things. I think it's body type one.
Okay.
That's more the scouting vibe, right? I think that not even necessarily like, I don't know. I think it's the ability to command two pitches is huge. I'm not saying like he needs to be able to like pinpoint accuracy on both a fastball and a changeup, but I want to. It's one thing to have stuff, right? Like it's one thing to have stuff, but it's another thing to like be able to know where it's going and know how to use it. I think is another thing. And then the other thing is like the ability to hold that stuff deeper into outings. That's why I thought Daniel Palencia had a chance, and I think he still does have a chance to like work as a starting pitcher, because his stuff held deep into starts and like pitch counts, not necessarily like innings, but pitch counts.
Yeah. I mean, you really sold me on the Palencia stuff, and I'm still there with you. I think the more time has gone on, the more willing I am to accept even just like 2-pitch guys. Like I was always concerned.
Justin Steele convinced you of it.
He convinced me, although you can make the argument he's not a 2-pitch guy with the different shapes. He's a crazy person, by the way. Like his stuff is crazy. But like with Palencia, you can see it work. Like a good example is like Spencer Strider, right? Like although he's kind of going through some changes now, but like heavy four seam changeup guy, like very unique in that regard. And I was like reading some like Driveline blogs about this, and
of course you were.
Yeah, but like the convincing thing I came away with is if you want to project guys in like 2-3 year windows, like 2-pitch guys are fine. If you want to project those guys in like 4 or 5+ windows, then you're going to need more than 2 pitches.
Yeah, and the big thing is like he has to be good with both of those pitches. Like he can't like and that's why I look at a guy like Jordan Wicks and I'm like, all right, he has 6 pitches right now. What are the odds that 2 or 3 of them end up being MLB good and he drops them? Like
I like how you think about that. Yeah. It's like you don't look at like, and that's exactly like I should communicate that as you just did right there. Like what are the odds given the bulk sum of your pitch types that one or more work out, right? Yeah. And like that's like why Assad is interesting. That's even why Hayden's interesting, because he still has like a cutter that can be worked out. He still has a changeup that can be worked out. And so I'm going to think like you just did right there. Like what are the odds one of those pitches just works out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at like Daniel Palencia, Jordan Wicks, right? Both those guys.
Yeah.
Daniel Palencia had the fastball and the slider predominantly, and then he also had a changeup. I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know what he's been working with most at the major league level. But like those pitches had to hit, like both of those had to hit. Jordan Wicks has 6 pitches, and it's like something's gonna work, right? Like something of those 6 pitches, they'll work. They'll be major league quality if he like whittles down the repertoire.
Plus, he has the base too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what else we got here? We got a couple Keegan Thompson questions. This is the most recent one here. Tell me if I'm crazy, but if Keegan Thompson was moved to the bullpen because he was a weapon there and now he isn't, should they try him back as a starter? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know.
That hadn't crossed my mind. The Keegan, I think Keegan Thompson and Caleb Killian are the 2 guys that I just like. I'm confused.
They break my brain, dude.
Yeah, like, I'm looking up some Keegan Thompson. So the swing strike rate on Keegan Thompson in AAA is just shy of 15%.
Okay.
He is not throwing any strikes. He's got a 50. Hold on. He's
Yeah.
got a 58% strike rate, which feels really low, right?
Yeah, it is. And so I don't know,
He's giving up long balls like crazy,
dude, what's
dude.
up with his velocity? Dude, he was
uh,
averaging like 92 last start. It's down like
yeah,
three
the
ticks.
velo's been very like up and down. Like he'll have an outing where he's like at 94, 95. He'll have an outing where he's 92. Like it's back and forth a lot. So,
Yeah.
uh, Jay, I don't know how to answer your question. I'm sorry. Keegan Thompson is confusing to me. I mean, it might be worth a shot. But it's like I don't know what we have in Keegan Thompson right now.
I
His last few outings, last outing he went 2 1/3, and he gave up 1 hit, no runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Prior to that, he had 3 straight outings giving up a run, including 3 runs over 2 innings.
yeah.
Like it's just been bad, dude. It's been bad. He's got a 10.7 ERA in AAA.
If you look at like Stuff Plus or like Pitching Bot, like he has
Mm-hmm.
some of the best stuff in the Cubs
Still,
bullpen. Still, yeah, even with all that stuff, right?
thanks.
So
I hate
like,
it.
yeah, so something's going on there. I don't know. Like when stuff like that happens, like even the Jeremiah Estrada stuff, like
Yeah.
I tap out. I'm not going to predict
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. Something crazy extreme that we don't know about's going on.
Yeah. All right, let's see what else we got. Some kind of quick hits here. I mean, this is a deep cut. You will.
Oh boy.
Matt Peters, just literally
Dude,
just Matt Peters question mark.
I don't know. You have to
uh,
lead with this, not me. I don't know.
yeah, I actually don't know. I actually don't know what's up with Matt Peters.
Okay.
He made it up to. I think he got some work in either South Bend or Myrtle Beach last year. He was the guy who was.
He's a big guy, isn't he?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he like grew like 9 inches between like his like sophomore and junior year of college or something. And was drafted. He was the guy that was drafted out of Ivy Tech or I think it was Ivy Tech in Indiana.
What a
That
name.
the year after he was drafted, they dropped their baseball program. So
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with him. He has not made his full season debut this year. So I haven't checked. I am not big. Honestly, I'll admit I'm not big on checking. Like I'm not like Brian. I'm not big on checking Arizona and Dominican Complex League numbers. So.
I brought this up to you off like before we got on, but like some of you prospect guys are just like I don't
Nerds,
understand,
man.
dude. It's like not even. I wouldn't even classify you guys as nerds, man. Like that's just not
Psychopaths?
normal. Like psychopaths is probably not even the right word either. Like I was listening to your episode with Brian, over the past couple of days here, and like Brian's like citing like DSL stats, DSL like red team. Like what the hell is this guy talking about? But he does it. The thing you can tell when someone is just a nerd or whatever you want to call it, they think it's normal. Like
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
it's
Dude.
like of course I'm gonna mention this. That's
I
how you know.
was saying it like I had to like last episode I had to call him out because he goes, oh yeah, like Derniche Valdez, like he's getting all those numbers because when he plays against the other Dominican Summer League team for the Cubs, that's when he really pads his stats. And I'm like, and he like kept talking, and I was like, whoa, like what? that was the most like that was the most like Brian thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That was incredible.
He has no idea.
Yeah.
I love Brian, but wow. Wow.
All right. I'm just trying to run through and see. We got an Ed Howard question. What are the chances he gets it turned around? I think he's still trying to get comfortable, dude. Like I think that like we talked about Canario coming back from serious injuries. He had a very serious hip injury, and I think still sitting here a year and a few months later, I think he's just not entirely comfortable. I don't want to say for sure, but like that's tough to come back from. So it's just super unfortunate.
It's not likely, I would say that, but
Yeah.
it's not like impossible.
If we can get MLB innings out of Ed Howard, we should consider that an extreme success.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like that's how it is. That's how it works. We already addressed the Killian Assad stuff. Brian Calmer. This is more nerdy stuff. Let's say that Brian Calmer is the 2024 version of McGeary and keeps hitting. Do you guys think he has the glove to stick at third base? I don't know. The only thing I'll address here, I'll say two things on this one. One is it's interesting that Calmer has been playing more first base and Jonathan Long has been playing more third base when they were drafted as the opposite position. That's super interesting. And the second thing I'll say is I think that we're getting hung up on like hoping for the next McGeary and hoping for the next Matt Mervis, and it's like that's not normal for that to happen in back-to-back years. You know what I mean? Like we shouldn't expect like low draft picks like that to break out in their first year in the system. So like I hope we're not putting that expectation. I mean, I'd love that. I'd love that to be the case. I just hope we're not putting that expectation on a guy like him.
Yeah.
What about this though? And can you see Matt Shaw or James Triantos moving there to third base next year? What are your thoughts on wanting to see Matt Shaw at third base and what that means for the major league team?
Dude, Matt Shaw's one of those guys. He just has that look, man. I don't know what it is. He is okay. So I'm on the periphery of watching the draft stuff. So like when the Cubs pick their guys, I just go to YouTube. I type in like Matt Shaw, and I watched every video. Yeah. And so I watch like all of his swings, all of his draft coverage, his workouts, and then I watch him debut. I'm like, wait, what? This guy does not look like the guy I just spent the last 3 hours watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like like that leg kick,
the leg
stride, like. I can't think of a guy who has as severe of a leg kick. The one guy that came to mind is like, who has something like this? And like Matt Holliday was the first guy that came to mind. Just like the high.
Oh, he did.
The high look. But
Neto.
even then, it's not that crazy.
Zach Neto with the Angels this year.
Yeah, that's a good one. But I'm like, someone.
It's not common, dude. Like that.
It's not common. And
what do you think the likely? I mean, like, will he need to change that? Like, is that something that, like he's just different and he can keep riding that out?
I mean, his swing is nuts. He's hitting lasers to right field that look like they should be singles and they're going over the fence. Like
the swing looks like it's built for like high fastballs. It's like the Nico thing, right? It's built for high fastballs.
Well, he has a low starting point and even like lower than Nico's. Like it's not. What's the phrase? Apples to apples. Is that even the right way of saying it? Whatever.
I mean that's a thing.
Okay, apples to apples. But like, if you look at some like Rizzo and Justin Turner, they have that very like low starting points, and they make that work. So
Justin Turner has a high leg kick.
He does, not as crazy as Shaw. Shaw's is like
it's like a pitcher.
It looks like a pitcher. But he kind of, if you look at just like the bat path, it kind of like starts from the same depth as like those Rizzo. And Turner types. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm very excited. The athleticism is greater than I expected.
Yeah, I'll say about Shaw, and we can throw Josh Rivera, who was the third round pick, into this as well. Don't read into what position they're playing at the low levels of the minors. Like it just, I said this on the last podcast episode. Like I can't emphasize enough how little what position a guy is playing at matters in the low minors. It does not matter at all, like one single bit. Yeah. And so like James Triantos played the entire year last year at third base for Myrtle Beach, the entire season. This year he's played almost the entire season playing second base. We might see him go to the Arizona Fall League and play some center field. He played some center field earlier this year, like a couple weeks ago. Like you can't project and say Matt Shaw is a shortstop right now. He's going to be a shortstop. Like you just can't.
Like dude, like even Nico Horner played center field in spring training 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like the best defensive second baseman in the league. Yeah, you just can't project that. So what do you think of Triantos though?
In general or defensively?
Well, in general, offensively, I'm very high on him. Defensively, the fact that when I listen to you and other guys talk about him, that the defensive projection is kind of unclear. It does leave me a little unsettled about his like peak value. But then again, without knowing how these guys go through the system, I don't know. I don't know if I should be concerned or not about that.
I think that.
Well, I don't like your pause either. That's not helping whatsoever. I'm trying to like give you an alley-oop to make me feel better about this.
I think that I love his bat. I think I love his bat. His bat is terrific.
Is the hold on. Is the defense really that much of a concern?
No. I worry about him laterally.
But he's still such a young dude, right?
He's still a young dude. Like I think that I don't think it's out of the question that he can't like improve and be a decent enough second. It doesn't take much to be a decent enough second baseman, dude. Like and honestly, like I think that like if he's not good laterally at second base and like gaining that range, I think I said to you like let's see him play third base. Like you don't need the range to play third base.
I mean, is he like worse than Madrigal defensively?
Different. I don't know. It's different. James Triantos is a he's a bigger guy, like with his shoulder. Like he's a bigger guy up top.
Dude, like yeah. So like I was watching him last year, and especially in Arizona, it looks like he like gained some weight last year, now lost some weight. Like he's just going through like that young teenager 20-year-old phase, you know, where like the body type's changing.
He's just changing. Yeah, I think when I interviewed him over in Peoria, he mentioned that like he used that time when he was out with the knee injury to his advantage in like in the gym, in the weight room.
Yeah.
Which is awesome that he didn't just like only try to rehab the knee. He was also trying to get better.
Well, if you talk to like Rich Beisterfeld about that, like he loves Triantos.
Yeah.
Like, he thinks he's one of the hardest workers out there.
I think that James Triantos is, I think he has an elite hit tool.
Yeah.
I think that he's really starting to tap into some more power. I think that he is one of the best in the system at not striking out, both because he is good at jumping on pitches early and because once he gets to 2 strikes, he can kind of battle. I just need him to play like I need him to find a home. If it's center field, that's fine. I don't
see him in the outfield.
I don't see him in the outfield either.
He's an infielder to me.
I think if he is at third base or second base and just plays average there, I'm about it. I just think that it's so tough to evaluate him. I'm about the bat. Like I ranked him top 10 in the system for a reason. You know, like I'm about him.
But I mean, the bat is for real. I will say though, like it's stupid. I don't care. But like I love watching infield practice, and like you played high school ball. Like when you grow up and you're watching like the other team pick infield practice, like for me, on those last plays in infield where like the shortstop is like going in on those slow, like rollover grounders.
Yep.
Triantos makes those look really good. Like to me,
he does it third base more than second base.
To me, he looks like an infielder. Like, that's a guy. Like, I know, like he may not be like.
I know he's working his ass off to play some good. Like with D'Angelo Jimenez, who's a infield coach with South Bend. He's been working his butt off with him.
I just wouldn't be surprised. That's all. I mean, like he looks like a hard worker. I think he's still growing. I mean, like he has athleticism. Like I just wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got. I know we had that big question from Steven, so we'll address that here. Let's see what we got.
How late do you have? Because that way
I should probably wrap up. I should probably wrap up.
I mean, you need to take your dog out.
I should probably help out.
I mean, how many questions do we have? How many
not many. There's a couple more here. What is it? What does the pitch? I saw Pitch Lab, so I clicked it.
Nice.
What does the Pitch Lab actually mean, and why should I continue to blame it? Why should I continue to blame it every time I'm pitching prospect plays?
Listen, that's a great question.
Oh my god, I love this. I love this question.
You want to take it?
So I guess like the Pitch Lab it's not a thing. I guess like it is a thing, but like I think that like we've grown like accustomed like just assuming it's like this like actual like laboratory, and it is to a certain degree, but like they can take it on the road. You know, it's just like working with guys. Now it's more set up down in Arizona, so you can like go in and a pitcher goes and you can see exactly the pitch shapes, the pitch spin rates, the pitch movements. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take 2 pitchers. They'll take a pitching prospect or a major league guy and identify a successful major league pitcher and say your curveball or your slider, for example, is pretty similar to this guy, but we want to get it to this extreme major league successful level. This is how you do it. Let's work in the Pitch Lab to make it that. It's
a calculator. So it's like basically, if you say 2 + 2 = 4, you need 2 and you need 2, right? Like for a pitcher, if they have certain traits, and it's not equaling 4, well, something's going on. You start messing around with it until 2 + 2 = 4. It's the best way to describe it. Like basically, these guys have innate traits. They're not optimizing it. Maybe spin efficiency is too much counterintuitively. Maybe it's too little given some of their underlying mechanics. If you look at someone, I think Stroman's a good example. Whenever I try to understand pitching, I go to the extremes. Like you always, when you learn something like this, go to the biggest extremes. That will help you understand stuff. Stroman has some of the most seam shifted wake. And so if you look at the super slow-mo videos, you can see why. I don't have a baseball here. I'm going to go get a baseball in 1 second.
All right. We took an hour and 20 minutes, but we finally got the talk of
I'm back.
seam shifted wake. So
I don't hear you though.
That's good.
Okay.
I was just saying it took us an hour and 20 minutes, but we finally got
I
to
know.
the topic
But
of
hold on,
seam
look at
shifted
this.
wake.
You see that?
Nice. That's huge.
But if you look at Stroman, if you look at where he releases the ball, how do I do this? Like his fingers, like at the release, his fingers are on the outside of the ball.
Yep.
So it's weird. So when he pushes off, his fingers are so on the outside that the ball, yeah, I can't really see it. The ball like moves weird, and you get this like seam shifted wake, and you take advantage of that, and it gets a ton of movement, right?
It moves in a way that is not expected based on the way that you're like gripping the ball, right?
Yeah, and it's for him. It's basically like how his fingers are at the point of release on the outside of the ball, right? So some guys do that naturally, and if you look at, I think Taillon's a good example as well. Like he has, good is not the right word. He has certain mechanics that lend towards a sweeper, and even Fulmer was the same thing. And there's a reason why instantly those two guys have some of the best sweepers on the Cubs, right? They're having issues. Taillon specifically is having issues for some other reasons, but like the sweeper from day one, Fulmer was throwing it 20% of the time. Taillon's throwing it 25% of the time from day one. There's a reason why like they already have comfort with that pitch. So that's where like the pitch lab is. It's a stupid name or whatever, but it's just trying to find traits that pitchers have and just optimizing it. It doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll throw out on this is that success in it's kind of a joke here, like blaming it every time a pitcher flames out, but
it's going to happen now.
It's going to happen.
It's experimentation for a reason.
I think that like everyone views the pitch lab as they need like a guy goes into the pitch lab and they need to come out with the level of success that we saw from Justin Steele. And that just like, that's not realistic. I tweeted out a couple days ago about how it was after Justin Steele threw and Adbert Alzolay closed out the game. And I was like, those are two prime examples of pitch lab guys, right? But I also threw out a list of names and one of the names included was Michael Rucker. And you would have thought
you got destroyed. I saw
my God.
That.
Yeah, dude. I got destroyed. And my point is not that Michael Rucker is a stud bullpen guy. My point is that he was a starting pitcher that flamed out in Double-A, and now he's getting actual innings. And for a while, pretty like important innings last year in Chicago. And it's like, you don't need to go to the pitch lab and come out a superstar. You need to go to the pitch lab and come out a guy that is better than when you went in. And Michael Rucker is a prime example of that. He was not going to make the major leagues as a starting pitcher in Double-A. He got drafted in the Rule 5 draft by the Baltimore Orioles. And when he was drafted in that draft, he was sent back to the Cubs because the Orioles didn't want to keep him on their major league roster. And now he has logged almost 100 total innings in the Cubs bullpen. That is a success in itself.
And like it's not going to work for everyone either.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like you have to take calculated risks. Some guys, they have stuff that does not work well. And their only way to adapt and get good is sometimes you have to take extreme measures to do stuff. And sometimes that makes you worse and you flame out. Like it just happens. Now, I don't know why Keegan's doing that and what happened to, Jeremiah Estrada, but like you accept some of the extreme falls to get some of the extreme like highs. And we've had a lot of extreme highs over the years.
Yeah. All right, let's go one more. I finished my beer. That means we're about up. All right, we got one more question from Stephen Monk, and I thought this was a good to address. Like this is kind of a very overarching question. It's a long one here. I shortened it down actually a little bit, but it may be my favorite question of the night tonight. He says that successful baseball organizations, and he specifically pointed out Houston and LA, Atlanta and Tampa Bay, are more than just their minor league systems. Why are they consistently successful? And are the Cubs doing the right things to become just as successful? That is a big question, but it's like I said, the most important thing here. You want to have it that first, or want me to go?
I'll give my brief little thing, and then we can talk about this. But like I asked the same question too. To be quite honest with you, I don't have the answer to it. I try to ask around. I have a few friends that are analysts, pitching coaches. I try to ask what's going on, and they don't know either, right? Like if the answer was known, everyone would be doing it. You can just look at the actions, and like Houston early on during the Jeff Lunhow days, they were really aggressive going and promoting guys that were kind of like cutting edge, so to speak. And the Dodgers came from that Tampa Bay fold. when they got Friedman. And that actually prompted Joe Madden to go to the Cubs when he left. So they're cut from that same cloth. Atlanta's a newer version of this, but Tampa Bay, like, they have been at the forefront. The answer that I get from a few coaches and even listening to Tommy Hotovy talk about this, there seems to be a general theme that's not going to be like satisfying for a lot of people perhaps, but like the common theme is cohesion.
Yeah,
and just,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And so what does that mean? It's the ability for the scouts to recognize pitchers that are molded for the pitching coaches and infrastructure to optimize, that leads to predictable success. And so that's kind of what they've done. And it's the communication aspect, this identifying the players, working with them. Like, these are big companies, man. These are massive companies across countries, across states and cities. And you're dealing with teenagers and family dynamics and international guys and language barriers. It's not easy, but some teams just have the ability to be cohesive and work across all those different I guess come obstacles if you want.
Yeah, I don't want to go too, honestly, you just nailed that pretty well. I think that was my answer, was just that everything has to be consistent from the before you're drafted all the way up to the major league level. There has to be an understanding of how things work, and that is not easy, dude. Like that's not an easy thing to have scouts that are scouting high school players or college players, but high school players as young as that age, or 14-year-olds down in the Dominican Republic.
Dude,
like you have to have scouts that are identifying those players that will ultimately be speaking the same baseball language as Tommy Hotovy and David Ross up at the major league level, that are speaking the same language as Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, that are speaking the same baseball language as the batting coach in AA. Like, it's just they all have to be on the same page, and that's just not easy.
And like, think about it too. Like, Taillon, again, going back to the Taillon example, it's been an underwhelming year for him, and like he's been better recently, but like he himself has said his fastball is not there. The difference between good Taillon and bad Taillon is 2 inches of horizontal break. That's it. It's like just 2 inches wild. Is a difference of dozens of millions of dollars. So that's like, it's so difficult for these organizations to get to that point where you're like, like the margin for error is 2 inches and you're not missing that much.
And you're telling me you don't want to work in baseball?
I don't want to work in baseball for now. I'm too happy talking with you, girl.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And I don't want to lose my job either. That's another thing. Like, baseball, dude, working in baseball, I would never go into baseball, to your joke right there. Like, the likelihood is you're not gonna have a job in like 3-4 years with the same team. Like, you want that uncertainty, like family wise, personal wise, you moving around.
Screw that.
Hell no, dude. I don't want
awful.
that. Absolutely not. I don't want to work in baseball.
Yeah. Hard pass from me.
Hard pass.
All right, man. I think we've addressed almost every single one of these questions. If we did not address your question, honestly, we've been pretty consistent with the amount of people tuned in and listening, which is wild. You guys are as crazy as we are.
I think some crazier people than me. Some of these names being thrown around, like the Matt Peters. Like, what is wrong with you people? It's like I've never heard of Matt Peters in my life. Like,
I'll give you the lowdown later. Don't worry. Okay. You want to plug yourself on anything here? We got a comment. We got a couple of comments from Jay. Super nice comments. But
thank you, Jay. Yeah, I mean, Corey Freeman and I do a show on Sundays at CHGO. I've been doing this for about a year and a half at CHGO. We had a podcast for like 5 years before that. Find us Sunday. Sometimes I write on chgo.com with Ryan Herrera. Ryan Herrera, he talks to like the players. I feed Ryan questions. I say, Ryan, I'm concerned about Hayden Wesneski's cutter. Can you please go ask him? And he'll go ask him about it. And we write a story. We actually have a story on that right now going in the work. So maybe like by the time next week that will be out. So hopefully it will be out. Yeah.
I love it. I haven't been writing nearly as much this year. I've been locked in on other stuff, but every week the Cubs on Deck podcast releases on Tuesday mornings. That is with Brian Smith, who's been mentioned a lot on this little live stream, as well as Greg Zumak, and then I get the broadcasters for the affiliates on with me as well, and then some other guys like Brendan and RM Layton and some other guys. So check that out on Tuesday mornings, every Tuesday morning. Actually, I don't know who is on my docket for next week, but we'll see.
Next year.
then
How many beers have you had over there? We are an hour and a half deep.
We're an hour. We're literally just past an hour and a half. That's our cue to wrap things up. But dude, I appreciate you coming on with me. Always a blast. And I don't know. We'll do. Honestly, this is the right time of the year to kind of do this, where we're talking about both.
Let's do it again soon. This is fun. I got nothing else going on, especially for an off day.
Exactly. All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man.